Remarkable is defined as notably or conspicuously unusual, extraordinary, and that is why we are all gathered here today to honor the memory of the remarkable Sue Fedor. Smart, funny, and warm-hearted, with a store of knowledge that an encyclopedia would envy, Sue Fedor was one of the most vibrant and original people I've ever known. I met her back in 1997, shortly after she and Steve won second place at the Virginia State Open Swing Dance Championships for their witty and crowd-pleasing routine that featured a new move that was called Spank the Devoney. It was quite the first impression. Sue was remarkable in many ways, one of which was the sheer number of things that she was interested and involved in. One of the things Sue loved most was live music and could be seen most Saturday nights dancing with her sweetie at venues such as Glen Echo, the Quarry House, or Hank Deedle's. Sue was a member of one of these bands herself, as a singer and musician with the female harmony vocal group, the Crayfish Sisters, and it was something that gave her great pleasure. She also worked to preserve the National Park Seminary with the Save Our Seminary organization, which is why we have this beautiful ballroom in which to celebrate her life. Sue was also a den mother with the Cub and Boy Scouts when her sons were younger. Steve still thinks that she enjoyed being a scout more than the kids ever did. She would argue that that wasn't true, and Steve, being the wise man he is, made it a point to never argue with a woman in a uniform. Sue was also very interested and involved in politics. She actively canvassed for candidates and often took her sons with her to marches and rallies. She was a mainstay of the local vintage fashion community and showcased her collection as a frequent model for the Art Deco Society's fashion shows. And she was an avid listener of the podcasts of Mike O'Mara and Tony Kornheiser. And then there was baseball. Sue had a deep and abiding love for baseball and considered herself to have two home teams, the Indians from her hometown of Cleveland and the Washington Nationals. Sue was over the moon last year when her beloved Cleveland Indians made it into the World Series and even left a music jam that she and Steve were hosting on their porch to watch a pivotal playoff game. Brilliant and inquisitive, Sue liked learning and knowing things. She taught herself how to play the guitar and used to play for weddings and at St. Peter's Catholic Church in Cleveland, where she grew up. Later in life, she decided that she would learn the ukulele for the Crayfish Sisters. Along with swing dancing, she fell in love with the Cirque du Soleil performers that climbed the aerial silks and took lessons at the Trapeze School, New York, near the Navy Yard. She even made Steve install a silk from the rafters in the attic of their house so she could practice. Steve would keep the bees, and Sue would find ways to do amazing things with the beeswax produced by their beehives. Lip balm, hand cream, allergy gum. She was always looking for ways to put it to good use. She did all this and more in addition to having a family and a full-time job. I often wondered if she ever slept. And no one had their finger on the pulse of what was happening in the world more than Sue. From politics and current events, to sports, the arts, and popular culture, Sue was plugged into them all and regaled us with her sharp, insightful, and often hilarious commentary. I was a big fan of her Project Runway fashion blog. I watched the show, but the experience wasn't complete until I had read Sue's weekly recap. Sue had an uncanny eye for pinpointing the problems with a contestant's design and describing them in a highly entertaining way. Karen has yet to meet a waistline she cares to accentuate. Why start now? The judges raved on and on about this sack dress to which all sorts of seeds and rice had been affixed. Come to think of it, this does look like the backseat of my car after a 12-hour trip with my kids. The snark was strong with Sue, which was evident nowhere more clearly than in her mordantly funny Facebook post, Tales from Stage 4, where she chronicled her journey with melanoma and all the indignities that accompanied it. I don't know how she did it, but Sue managed to find the humor even in that. In addition to being a gifted writer, Sue was also an enthusiastic conversationalist. She would happily engage with anyone and saw every exchange as an opportunity to disseminate information and for spirited discussion, often jumping in before the other person had finished speaking because she was so eager to make her point. Steve worked hard to break her of that habit. He was only moderately successful. And Sue could be, on occasion, jaw-droppingly blunt. The hashtag no filter could have been invented for her. But there was never any malice in what she said. She just called him like she saw him and was refreshingly, if sometimes bracingly, honest. Another thing that was remarkable about Sue was her generosity. Winston Churchill once said, "We make a living by what we get, we make a life by what we give." And Sue was one of the most generous people I know. Steve told me that Sue had a Norman Rockwell-like fantasy of being a fat Italian mother, minus the fat part, with the house where all the neighborhood kids would come after school. There would be a pot of soup on the stove, and it would be a place of safety where they could talk about anything that was troubling them. And this open arm policy extended to her and Steve's friends, too. Sue liked nothing more than to have a house full of people that she could feed, and anything was an occasion for a party. Harvesting honey from their beehives, New Year's Day, the season premiere of the TV show Mad Men, the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. Sue loved to entertain and was a superb hostess, and if it involved vintage clothes or formal wear, even better. Sue wanted everyone to feel welcome and included, and she was especially sensitive to those who were celebrating holidays without families or far from them. She and Steve had Hanukkah parties and held several Passover Seders for Jewish friends who didn't have family in the area. One year, we had a mutual friend from the swing dance community who was recently separated. So Sue invited him to Thanksgiving dinner so he wouldn't have to be alone. Somehow, I got invited along too, and that is how I ended up a regular at the Fedor family Thanksgiving celebrations for over 10 years. And these parties and dinners were made even more special through the creative, artistic, crafty spin Sue put on them. Her table was always set with vintage linens, depression glass china, and beautiful handmade decorations. And for the Passover Seders, she even handcrafted puppets to act out the Exodus scene. Sue had her father's artistic talent. She could draw and paint, create things from nothing. She would have given Martha Stewart some serious competition. Her father and mother also gave her a love of country and all things that are truly American. Freedom to think and disagree with others. They taught her to speak up, know her topics, defend her positions, and to listen to the other side, just in case they had a point. They taught her that her community was important and it should be represented well, so she never missed voting in an election in her life. Her family was important to her, warts and all, and she said how much she wished that her mother had been there to see the boys. Sue met Steve in the summer of 1992 at a party, and they dated enthusiastically for the next 3 years before getting married. Steve had proposed to her after the first year. It was more of an on-the-spot suggestion, really. Sue didn't say no. Instead, she said something characteristically direct, like, "Don't be an idiot, what's your hurry?" One thing was for sure, she was never going to get that job working on the suicide hotline. Sue and Steve wanted children, but took a full 5 years to have them. At about 3 years, Sue said to Steve, "Maybe we should think about starting a family soon." Steve paused for a moment, looked at her lovingly, and said, "Don't be an idiot, what's your hurry?" Sue, being an only child, said she wanted just one child. Steve, coming from a family of 3 children, said, "How about 3?" Sue said, "You're just trying to recreate your family." Steve said the same thing back to her. Ultimately, they agreed on 2. Congratulations, Gregory, you made the cut. Eddie and Gregory were her pride and joy. She loved them completely and worked hard to understand them and set them up for success. As they grew, she couldn't wait to see what they would do and say next. She said, "Babies are nice, but I can't wait to be able to talk to them." Both Sue and Steve agreed that listening to your child was the key to being a good parent, and that it was important to always be their best resource for life lessons. She said, they will always feel good about talking to you if they know they can trust what you tell them to be true. She was so proud of them, and one of her only regrets was that she didn't have time to see them become what they will be and to celebrate them for what they will do. But she did say that at least she knew that she had chosen a partner that will be able to do that for her, since she won't be able to do it herself. There is so much more I could say about Sue, but there are people who will be sharing remembrances that can say it better than me. But if Sue was here today, she would definitely have a few things to say to us. Ever practical, she would tell us to wear a hat and wear sunscreen so we can avoid the melanoma that cut her life short. On a more personal level, Sue offered the following advice in her blog about her 2 hometown baseball teams, Cuyahoga to Anacostia, in early April of this year. Spend lots of time with the people and things that make you happy. Whenever someone famous passed away, Sue would always say, "Safe home," in a Facebook post. Now it is our turn to say safe home to our dear and remarkable Susie Q. Her bright light is gone. I can do it. Home stretch. Her bright light is gone, and the hole she leaves in our lives is vast, but we are all so much richer for the times that we shared with her and for the love that she gave us. Thank you.